Fulcha!
Fulcha!
Welcome, my friends. You're most welcome. I hope you're keeping safe and well in these most difficult times. What with all the numerous cattle raids and the harsh weather we're having and...
Anya! Will you stop? We haven't even introduced ourselves to our friends, and there you are, prattling on again as usual. I'm sorry, my friends. You must pardon her. She's a bit of a chatterbox, this one. Allow me to introduce ourselves properly to you. Tell you who we are and what we do. My name's Finn, and as you know, this is Anya. And we're warriors in the Red Branch Knights, soldiers of Allah, Ulster, as you know it. And our job is to protect the borders from invaders.
We're on our way to Owen Maca, or as you might know it better as Armagh. We're going to meet up with our fellow warriors because our king, King Conor MacNessa, believes that we're about to be invaded. We were up near Derry, when we got word of the invasion, and we had to make our way back to Armagh. It's a fair walk, let me tell you that. So we've decided to stay in these woods for the night, make camp and have a bit of food and some rest and continue on our journey tomorrow.
You know, there's nothing I like more than sitting beside a fire and eating some food and telling stories. You see, we don't have the technology that you folk have, and well, telling stories is a way to keep us entertained at night, you know.
It's also a great way to remember our history and our past and our stories, and so they can be remembered and passed on to our children. They'll learn them and pass them on to their children too. Do you tell stories? I'm sure that you do.
You know what? Why don't we tell them one of our great stories about one of our heroes? I mean, this time of year, Samhain, Halloween as you know it, we're somehow closer to our ancestors who've passed over to the afterlife, and well, it seems fitting that we tell one of our great heroic tales.
That's a great idea. Which one should we tell first?
So many, you know. You know what? Maybe we should tell them about our greatest warrior, who was born with the name Setanta. What about that one?
I love that story. Okay. Right, my little warriors, are you sitting comfortably? Yes, even you in the back there? Great, I'll begin. Once upon a time, there was a young boy called Setanta. Setanta had been born outside the province of Ulster and had been sent to Owen Maca to join the Red Branch Knights. These were great warriors of Ulster and trained boys from a very young age to be the next generation of fighters needed to protect our land. Setanta loved nothing more than to play with his friends, learning how to fight and playing games of chase and tig.
One day, King Conor MacNessa, the King of Ulster, announced that he was going to visit his blacksmith, Cullen, at his home near the mountain of Slieve Gullion. The king wanted all his warriors to come with him, but told Setanta that he could join them later, after he'd finished playing a game of hurley with his friends.
Later that day, after finishing his game of hurling with his friends, Setanta packed up his belongings and started to make his way to the fort of Cullen, where the feast was taking place for the king. As he got close, he found that the gates to the fort were closed, and that in front of the gates, guarding the fort, was a great hound.
This hound was no ordinary dog. It was bigger than most men. Its eyes were red with fire and its teeth were snarling, ready to attack. Suddenly, the hound pounced. Setanta and the hound fought with each other for what seemed like an age, and to the outsider looking on, it might have seemed that the hound was going to win.
Suddenly, Setanta broke free. He ran to where he dropped his belongings, lifted up his hurl and slither, and struck the sliver with an almighty whack. The slither flew at great speed towards the hound and struck the fierce beast in the mouth, killing it instantly.
Eventually, after dusting himself off and catching his breath, Setanta made his way into the fort to meet up with King Conor and the rest of the Red Branch Knights. When he got there, Cullen was furious. He demanded to know from the king what was to be done. He had raised that hound for 7 years so that it was trained to protect his home, and now he would have to wait until another hound could be trained.
King Conor saw that Setanta was very sorry for what had happened and knew that he was merely trying to defend himself. However, something had to be done as Cullen was his good friend and a very important man of his tribe. So Connor had an idea.
And so, from that day forth, until Cullen could train up a new hound, Setanta became Cullen's new hound, his new protector. And from that day forth, Setanta became known as Cuchulainn, meaning the Hound of Cullen. It's a great story, that one.
I love that story. And that's how Setanta became the new hound. And that's how he became known as Cuchulainn, the Hound of Cullen. I just love that story.
Love it, love it. But you know what? I have another story about Cuchulainn.
Really? Which one?
The one about how Cuchulainn became the greatest warrior of Ulster.
Oh, I love that one. With the lashing rain and the howling winds and the demons.
Oh, here, hang on. Don't ruin it for our friends here.
Sorry, mum's the word.
Right, my little ones. I'm going to tell you a story about how Cuchulainn became the greatest warrior of Ulster. And I want you to be sitting comfortably where you are right now. But, along with this, I actually want you to get involved with this story. Now, you're going to hear me talk about claps of thunder, a howling wind, lashing rain. And every time I mention those three things, I want you to carry out certain actions. So let me teach you those actions. So when I say a clap of thunder, I want you to go. All right, everybody, 1, 2, 3, clap of thunder. And when I say a howling wind, I want you to go, oh! Ready? 1, 2, 3, oh! And when I say lashing rain, I want you to go, ready? 1, 2, 3, lashing rain. Very good. So when I tell this story, every time I say those three things, I want you to carry out those actions. So once upon a time, King Conor MacNessa was having a great feast at Ironmacha. And at that feast, it was customary that at the end of the feast, the finest piece of meat was given to the greatest warrior. Now, King Conor, at the end of the feast, took up the finest piece of meat and he held it high and he said, I want to give this piece of meat to the greatest warrior of Ulster. And 3 young warriors stood up. One of them was Cuchulainn. Now the king couldn't decide which was the greatest warrior of Ulster at the time. And all the warriors that were at the feast couldn't decide which of these 3 young warriors was the greatest. So the king called for his wise man, a bard, to come and help decide who was the greatest warrior. The bard had a little think about it. And he said, you know what, King Conor, I've got a test for these 3 warriors. You need to hold a feast for the next 4 nights. And each night at the feast, a demon will come to the feast and will test the warriors. And by the end, we will find out who is the greatest warrior of Ulster. So, King Conor agreed, and the next night he held the first of the 4 feasts. And there was much eating and drinking and making merriment, when all of a sudden there came a clap of thunder. A howling wind, oh! Slashing rain, and a knock upon the door. There appeared a scary demon. And the demon said, who is the greatest warrior of Ulster? And one of the young warriors stood up, not Samantha, not Cuchulainn. And that warrior said, I am the greatest warrior. The demon looked at that warrior and said, I will enter into bargain with you. I will let you cut off my head tonight if I can come back and cut off yours tomorrow. But the young warrior was very brave, shook the demon's hand. The demon said, go for it. So the young warrior took his sword, pulled it out, cut off the demon's head, and the demon's head fell onto the ground. But was the demon dead? No. He merely walked over to his head, picked it up, placed it back on his shoulders, and turned to the young boy and said, "I'll be back for you tomorrow." And with that, the demon disappeared. And the warrior ran like the wind from the feast, never to be seen again. Well, the next night, the second feast was held, and there was much eating and drinking and merriment, when all of a sudden there came a loud clap of thunder, a howling wind, oh, lashing rain, and a knock on the door. And the demon appeared and said, "Who is the greatest warrior of Ulster?" The second warrior stood up, not Cuchulainn. And the demon said, "I will enter into bargain with you. I will let you cut off my head tonight if I can come back tomorrow and cut off yours." And the young warrior, being brave, agreed, and shook the demon's hand, took out his sword, sliced off the demon's head, and the demon's head fell onto the ground. But do you think the demon was dead? No. He merely picked up his head, placed it back on his shoulders, and said to the young warrior, "I'll be back for you tomorrow." The demon disappeared. The young boy ran off into the night, never to be seen again. Third night, third feast. There was much eating and drinking and merriment, when all of a sudden there came a loud clap of thunder, a howling wind, oh, lashing rain, swish, 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 and a knock upon the door. This time the demon appeared again and said, "Who is the greatest warrior of Ulster?" Young Cuchulainn stood up and said, "I am." The demon said, "I will enter into bargain with you. I will let you cut off my head tonight if tomorrow I can come back and cut off yours." And Cuchulainn agreed. Took out his sword, cut off the demon's head, and the demon's head fell onto the ground. Do you think the demon was dead? No, he merely bent over, picked up his head, placed it back on his shoulders, and said to Cuchulainn, "I'll be back for you tomorrow." The demon disappeared. But Cuchulainn did not run. He sat back down. Fourth night, fourth feast. There was much eating and drinking and merriment, when all of a sudden there came a loud clap of thunder, a howling wind, oh, lashing rain, swish, swish, and a knock upon the door. And the demon said, "Who is the greatest warrior of Ulster?" And Cuchulainn stood up and said, "I am." The demon looked at Cuchulainn and said, "I entered into bargain with you last night. I let you cut off my head. Now it's my turn to cut off yours." The demon drew his sword. Cuchulainn bent his neck forward. The demon brought his sword down, and just as the blade touched the flesh, the back of Cuchulainn's neck, the demon turned into the wise man that had spoken many nights previously. And he turned to Cuchulainn and said, "Cuchulainn, you truly are the greatest warrior of Ulster. For your word is your bond. You made an agreement, and you stuck to it." And that, my friends, that is how Cuchulainn became the greatest warrior of the tribe of Ulster. I love that story.
I love it too.
Well, look, we have to get going. It's a long walk to Armagh, and we're going to have to make a start on it soon, so we'll need to get some rest. But thank you for coming to visit with us, and we hope that we'll see you again soon. Goodbye. Slán.
Slán.